Good afternoon. My name's Emily Butler. I'm the curator of the Conversations program. Thank you all so much for being here with us this afternoon. We're really thrilled to be hosting the next panel, which is looking at developments in the Brazilian art scene and the Brazilian art market, which has seen a lot of change in the last year. Lots of exciting projects as well, including the São Paulo Biennial, which is closing this weekend. And we're thrilled to be joined by 4 experts of the scene. We are joined on stage by Márcio Botner, who's an artist and a gallerist, by the collector Pedro Barbosa, by the curator and researcher Thiago de Paula Souza, and the panel will be moderated by Oliver Basciano, the writer and editor. We will have time for questions at the end of the panel. But first of all, please do join me in giving our speakers a very warm round of applause and enjoy the conversation.
Okay, so thank you all for coming. I have to send an apology from Louisa Strina, who was supposed to be here, but can't be. She's under the weather. She's feeling a bit poorly. So you have to put up with us. So apologies also for an all-male panel, which was not intended at all. But nonetheless, we have a great group of people here to speak. So we're going to sort of address the question. Each of the guys will address the question for a couple of minutes and introduce themselves, and then we'll kind of bring the conversation out a little bit more, and then again we'll turn the conversation to you guys, and hopefully you'll have some questions. But really, what we're thinking about is how, in the last year, Brazil has obviously undergone a wider social, political, cultural change after years of even more change, turmoil, you can call it what you like, and really kind of thinking about how that affects art production, the art market, art exhibitions, and whether that kind of national politics, that national kind of movement has direct bearing on what the art is we're seeing and making at the time. And all 3 of our speakers have experience and are very much sort of on the ground, seeing the cold face of things being made. And these are 3 curators and collectors and gallerists that I definitely see out and about everywhere, seeing studio visits. They're not sort of sitting. Even though they have great experience, they're not sitting in their ivory towers. So I think they definitely have an ear to the ground. So maybe I can start with you, Márcio. So Márcio Botner is the director and co-founder of Gentil Carioca in Rio de Janeiro, which is celebrating its 20th anniversary. And I think...
That's the sculpture.
Yeah.
And cake of the 20 years.
That's your birthday cake?
Yes.
Very good.
Not mine. The cake was for everybody.
So yeah, if you could just introduce the gallery and perhaps say something about how what the scene was like in Rio at its inception, given it's 20 years ago now, and what we're looking at now in terms of engagement, social engagement, political engagement with the artists. Has that changed?
Wow. A big change. Did you start collecting 20 years ago?
Yeah.
More or less at that time, no?
Yeah. Exactly.
Thiago was not born yet. a lot of change, I think. A lot of change. 2003, we start the gallery, and I remember very well that in Rio, you don't have galleries that really support, young artists. And I think even in São Paulo, very less, very few that, and was a totally different situation. We have, for the other side, 2003 was the moment that Lula is getting in the government, starts changing, but the things will go more, a little bit in the years. that began really a lot of connection about Brazil, around Brazil, with artists, with institutions, but at that moment was nothing. Rio was very, very few spaces, and we even know what we are going to do. We know that we need the space for art. We need the space for the artists. And that's how we start with Ernesto Neto, Laura Lim, and I. The first building used to be my studio, and that's how happened. No, I remember that we even know it's going to be a commercial gallery. No, we think that we can perhaps survive in another way, but other colleagues are doing projects having like support of a company, and then change the director of the marketing, and then finishing, and then we say, and then came a lot of experience of Neto already with some galleries, of his galleries, that came say, hey, we need to have really, we need to have the art going through, and from the art, we must have the liberty, and that's what happened. And that was, I think, it's interesting to see the collecting market. For me, for a long time, I think until now, art is concrete, market is abstract. What we really start, and from this, I think, different from other galleries, is much more thinking how we can really create a different program, a different way of organizing. Like we never think about having our name in the gallery, or how we can have like a art public, how we can create a new generation of artists. And then we really saw this happening. Even more, I think, after 2005, that when we start to have this project of the wall, that I think it's an art public that was just in front of one of the building, and we start occupying it. Like, wow, we need to have art here on the street. And then we start to realize how really art can contaminate people. How this changed the neighborhood. And if you really want to start with something, start small in the neighborhood. And this after that, because the gallery stay in the middle, the center of downtown Rio, is the Sahara, the biggest open market, and how this start changing the people. No, people like, doesn't like, start asking questions. And so this was a totally different moment after, I think, galleries really start. Now we have a scene much more inclusive. We have this in the last two São Paulo biennials, amazing. We have now really a totally different situation that perhaps I can open to my colleagues to bring more, but
I think it's important. I think what's so interesting about Gentil Carioca is that is precisely where it's located. I mean, it was always an artist, it still is an artist-run gallery. But the location, I mean, the video is kind of looping around, but if you see, like, you don't really have an option not to have people, the public, a wide audience coming to your openings, because life happens in the street, and the openings happen in the street, and it sort of commingles, and it's not, it's not a fancy area. It's not a posh area. It's a true Rio area. So I think like that's that you kind of, you don't have the option not to. It is very much of the city, the space.
Indeed, again, the artists create this cross street. Now, I remember that at that moment the galleries used to serve in an opening. Stupid, terrible. Imagine in Brazil, white wine and something. And we remember that was the first one to start bringing beers, and also the Globo, biscuit Globo. It's a traditional one we have on the beach. And then we put the beer in the end of the gallery, but the gallery was not so big, one of the building, Yeah. So it was crowded, and that we decided, hey, let's bring the beer down. And then start everybody, And when you see, like this, it is how you really can celebrate with art. I'm not saying that celebrate is nice, is fun.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you see these images and you say, oh, they know how to do a party. And I was saying, that's not a party. What's really happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
When you look at this last open of the 20 years, with 73 artists, that is still now the show, with historical artists like Elliot Sika, that is our neighbor with the center, no? Oh, this is a project we do on the beach. We did for 10 years, the Alalao. It's another art public to go to the beach and to put a flag there and to do an action. Invite an artist, put the name of the artist, and do an action. And also, we did this for 10 summers there. Again, creating a platform, creating a different way to contaminate and people. And with this many years, I saw like a artist with, I don't know, he started going there with 13 years old, and then he came with 19 and say, I'm becoming an artist. I say, yes, because of you. Because what's a serious responsibility. I remember that I went out for a while. I stayed thinking, wow, what am I doing? You know? So this is we are talking about market in a different way, and that's what I believe. Like for years, like people saying, oh, you need to go to São Paulo, and I have a lot of friends, collector, and others there, but and I don't know. I was starting very in the beginning, even because Rio doesn't have a big market, even nowadays, but before. We start much more doing the art fairs. So the first fair we did, we have less than 2 years old, 1 year and a half is the first fair. So, and then São Paulo, we decide now 2 years and a half, because a friend, Ricardo, called me, a friend. Everything is about this also, friendship, relationship, believing, trust. I trust in art. And then we start this place that is a kind of a comuna, a kind of exchange experience. And Pedro is we are neighbors there in this place in São Paulo now. So it's another new experience happening, you know? It is a small street that you must go there. So it's always a way to think in a different, how you kind of think in a different way, also the market. The market is a consequence. The first thing is the art, the good art, the artist. So
let's turn to your next door neighbor, both in the room and in Sao Paulo. And it's interesting what Márcio said about, art is concrete, the market is abstract, especially, I guess, as a former trader, and you are an amazing collector. So I wondered if you could have a little comment on that, because definitely your taste in art and your interests in art are go towards the abstract, go towards the conceptual.
Hello. Okay. Well, first, thanks for the invitation. Oli, that has been a friend for a long time. Márcio Botner, who I first bought my first art about 15 years ago. And since then, we created a wonderful relationship that has been evolving over the years. My dear friend, Thiago, who we collaborate during COVID in a Tony Coke's conversation. So thank you all. My first point is that Biscoito Globo is from São Paulo. It's not from Rio.
That's not true.
No, go Google it, and you're going to see that the first time was made in São Paulo, and the guy moved to Rio and started selling on the beaches in Rio. Sorry. Okay, so let me create the polemic. Okay, because I'm here to create friction. Yeah. But And the other thing I want to mention is the Alalao, where I have an amazing experience. I really found myself a guy from São Paulo. So it was this thing that you have to go to the beach because they put the golden flag there, and then you have to take your shoes off, you know, and walk on the beach. But then, you know, the sand glues in your foot, you know, and then you have to clean. I said, no, I'm not this. I'm from São Paulo. There is no new concretism for me. Okay, there's no body involvement, nothing. And I learned because of this event there in Rio. But going to your question, I don't know what to say. Which one is how do I say, abstract or concrete? You know, sometimes the market is extremely abstract too, and sometimes the art is extremely concrete. And I guess these days the art has been extremely concrete. Let's put it this way. So it's a question that we could navigate and discuss this forever more in a philosophical way. So honestly, I don't have an answer for this. What I can tell you is about myself. So I like to navigate in the part of the art market that is not well explored, or where people don't pay attention to. So, and I also like to navigate where I can make connections. So, you know, so how I can relate one piece of art that is in the collection to another piece of art that might be a total different media. So how do I put these things together in a concrete way and an abstract way? So it's very difficult to talk about the market in this way. I think we can talk about the marketing more in a tangible way. And this we can have a big discussion about, okay? Like Art Basel is a tangible way, right? Booths are a tangible way. Prices are tangible. You know? The abstraction it's another story. It's your passion, your love, how you communicate to that thing, your personal relationships with the dealers. I see some people that are really in the bottom of my heart here in the crowd, Márcio. You know, so it's another story. So I'm more involved in this emotional side and actually in the way where art is challenging people. So difficult to say that, to answer your question.
Why did you want to open a space? So you're a collector and then has a project space, an experimental project space where you do 4 shows a year, something like
4 shows a year, yeah. So, no, the idea was that since over the years we put a gigantic archive, and archive grew, mushroom many, many times. So we might have today 20,000 pieces in the archive. And a lot of people start navigating in an orbit around the collection, around this archive. So at one point we came with the idea, so why don't we have, get a space where we can throw projects there. There was this opportunity again with Ricardo Sardenberg, the same friend the same friends as Márcio, that he was living in that alley, that dead-end street. And he said, oh, guys, there are a few possibilities here. And then I went there to visit, actually, Márcio's gallery. I said, oh, why should I rent a space here and start a project space, since we had, a lot of people, in the orbit that had ideas for shows. And that's how we started. And the other thing is that, I believe that when one buys an artwork, it's a two-way road. You have to buy an artwork knowing that, the artist is trusting you, that you're going to take care of that artwork, that you're going to make it public, that you're going to show, that you're going to stress what the meaning of that artwork is about. So you're going to create, you're going to bring life to that artwork and not just basically leaving this in a storage where, this will disappear. So it was a moment that I said, so what's the meaning of the next piece in the collection? Okay. What's more meaningful, the next piece or to start showing things, to start actually fostering, the how do I say, the infrastructure of the art scene, so by commissioning research, us bringing young people to do curatorial exercise, so this kind of thing. So at this moment, we said, no, we have to navigate towards this way, okay? And then that's why we started the project space.
Did you think that was missing from the art scene in Brazil?
Well, it was missing for me, honestly, I don't care if it's missing for other people, was a mission that, again, is when an artist trusts me and he sells me an artwork, it's a contract. I have an obligation to that artwork. I have an obligation to that artist. Okay, so it's not just an asset that goes to my income tax declaration. Okay, so there are a lot of things around, and this has to be taken in consideration, and that's the reason. So there is a whole infrastructure behind this that has to be put to work. And I thought that I could play this game along with these brilliant people that we have there, like the one that is next to me that during COVID collaborated, in a very nice webinar talk about Tony Coates. So, we have a lot of human capital there that is barely explored. So, you have to make to give them protagonism and to make them to show up to show that they are able to do amazing things. And, so once you start to do this, it's incredible. It's like a nuclear reaction, it's one next to the other. So it has been quite a lot of fun.
Thiago, hey. So Thiago's a curator and most recently curated an amazing project with Celisa Rosa, who's here, and a beautiful project in the Collins Park Rotunda. And I wanted to ask, so congratulations on that. So I wanted to ask you about, you work both a lot in Brazil, but you also work in Europe and abroad. So I wanted to ask you, from a distance as a Brazilian, what shifts of change you saw in the last year or two, and I guess mood changes and what artists are making work about, and is there anything you can identify, or is that too a micro question in a kind of macro world?
It's a great way to start. First, thank you for the organization, for Basel, and for all the care, and thank you for coming here. It's very nice to see some familiar faces, some new friends, some people that I managed to meet to say hi during the past busy days. And of course, thank you for the artists who are also here. They have been my truly partners in crime, and they have been the ones that I've been working hard and try to support. In trying to answer your question, I would, and also in a way, in following up what Márcio started saying about the change in the scenes, the past, I would say, 10 years maybe, or the past 5 years, a lot has changed in the local scene, in how institutions, how galleries, how collectors, artists and curators are organizing and thinking about what contemporary art in Brazil can be, or what is the role of contemporary art, and how contemporary art can also be in a close dialogue, in a close conversation to provide more social justice. I think for ages or for decades, there was some sort of silence and some conversations that had been hidden or ignored, some unfinished business in Brazilian history. They came to the stage, I would say. And so, from my perspective, the scene is definitely more plural, more diverse, more complex. I would, but of course, things take time. You know, and so I would say that artists now are still struggling to figure out what is sustainable and how these new names, how this new practice, how they will maintain their practice through the years. You know, after this sort of like boom, after this moment that we're living now, that some some conversations that hadn't started before. Like, I mean, what are the process, or what is the effort, or what is the labor that we need to somehow enact to promote and to protect those artists? And yeah, so I'm really curious to what happens in the next decade or in the next 10 years. Like, I mean, would some of these conversations are just trend, or are they really here to stay? And how can we, as like me as a curator, can also support the work of this artist? You know, and so I really like to collaborate and to work with artists for years, you know, and like long-term collaboration. So you mentioned about like Salisa Rosa, who's also here. We've been working for 5 years, since the beginning of her practice. You know, I saw her first artwork. I bumped into it by coincidence, like in her first group show. And so since then, since that moment, that work was in my mind, and I was, I want to meet this artist. Now we can see the picture. That's Cachel Vitorino Brasileiro. It was part of a group show at Pinacoteca de São Paulo, and she's also one of these emerging names in the scenes, that she's also not only doing like commercial shows, but also institutional shows. And so my major concern now is like how can we figure out a way to sustain this practice? You know, what happens after this boom?
Yeah, I mean, I think just to give it some context is obviously during on a national level, during the Bolsonaro government, the culture industry for non-Brazilians or people who don't know the ins and outs, the culture ministry was gutted, and pretty much funding sort of ground to a halt on purpose. And then sort of in a reaction to that, into that political moment, and the other injustices going on within that moment, I think a lot of reckoning happened. So in the current biennial, we have the first black majority curatorial team in the history of the biennial in a black majority country, which is kind of both great and also kind of shocking. So these kind of moments of kind of quite severe national trauma, depression, or something, certainly within the artist-making community, the exhibition-making community, I think I can generalize. But then kind of positive or a huge energy came out of that sort of try and put things right. I mean, this is an outsider talking, so maybe you can comment on that, or whether if that's a good reading of the past few years, 5 years.
Good. I think it's great what is happening. It's important and great. I totally agree with Thiago. Perhaps one of the most important word is continuity. No, that's what is very important, even more in Latin America, when we know how, like, with crazy, stupid people like Bolsonaro can suddenly, like this change, what is growing, and it's so easy, It's so difficult to construct and so easy to finish really a mind. So I think it's great. You can talk different things about the biennial, but I think it's very important what's happening. And yeah, and we are going to support. I think this is what is happening, like Salisa's work and happening here. I think that's why you have this team together, collector, galleries, not more an artist, but still an artist ever, or ever.
It's always in your
Always
head.
an artist and a curator. I think this is very interesting that we are here to say yes, because we need the continuity, you know?
Pedro?
Well, I have to say that I never been an optimist, but I always have hope. I want to say this because, you know, capital is very nasty. So they go for opportunities. So it might be the buyers and the dealers that need to check boxes. I need number of Afro artists, a number of indigenous artists, because there is a market demand. And I want to know if they're going to really support these people, okay? So to bring them in is very easy. So to make them is very difficult, and to kick them out is also very easy, okay? So I want to know if these relationships, they are really true relationships, okay? Because it's beautiful in the narrative. I want to see in the action. Okay, so I don't take more, you know, this thing that I want, you know, I don't take more the affirmative action. I think this is nonsense. I want assertive actions, okay? So people have to make this happen. So I want to know that these people will really be committed to this indigenous Brazilians and to the Afro-Brazilians. And this is valid for any other place, anywhere in the world, and not to be opportunistic only. So I think time will tell. You know, my gut feeling is that the capital is always nasty, okay? And the capital is always taking opportunities. So we have to fight this nastiness of the capital. Okay, so we really have to be very smart, because Buddy is smarter than us, I think. We have to outsmart money. So I will wait and see. So I can tell you for my own how I deal with that. You know, I'm very cautious since I have a lot of artists in the collection. So I add little by little at this point. So, and also by being into the conceptual art world, you know, most of the people that I collect over the years, they are highly educated, you know, so it's not only the virtuosis that counts, okay? So I was formed into my family is highly educated. I'm the only one without PhD at home. So, you know, I come from this kind of thing. So it's natural for me to be involved with that. I'm not saying that other practices are not valid, but this is how I am, and I'm going to try to navigate elsewhere. But I see that the human capital we have in Brazil is insanely good. And, you know, I don't like this thing of 100, 200 most powerful, but doesn't matter. You know, we have a few Brazilians there, and this never happened because we really have strong human capital, okay? And we can position ourselves. But we need to be smart. We cannot fall in the hands of the so-called oba-oba of the opportunistics, okay? So, and I want to know how we are going to play that game. I don't know yet. And I have the same concerns, as you say, how we perpetuate this thing, how we make this thing, you know, solid to have its own life.
Thiago, do you want to pick up on any?
Yes, of course. I believe that. I was thinking what you're saying, it was echoing in my mind, and perhaps what we really need to figure out is a way to establish a constant support to emerging practice and to mid-career artists, and to see, because I mean, in Latin America and Brazil, we have like this history of non-continuity. You know, like great projects, amazing projects, they start very well, amazing practice, they start very well, and something happens, you know, and they never, like, I mean, something that is starting to build, starting to become, before becoming strong or before becoming mature enough, it just collapses. And so I really think that it's quite interesting to figure out what are the solutions, what are the possibilities. It's really interesting, it's really good now that we have again like a Minister of Culture who's supporting this alternative that also allows the artists to figure out ways to produce also beyond the market. Of course, like the market is fundamental, but it's still super interesting to imagine what are the other possibilities of producing, of creating. I don't really think that an artist starting a career needs to be completely aficionate with the market since the beginning. I think it might be even some sort of like a prison to develop a practice where your horizon is merely to sell. You know, of course, the production of money is fundamental. It's important to all practice. But for me, it's really important as well to imagine that one can build something, one can have like support on their own ideas beyond the market. And so I'm here for that, you know, to be with the artists and to listen to their ideas and to see how can we find solutions, how can I, like, I mean, how can we work together? You know, what is the kind of conversation that you want to try to do? And this, especially these artists that we're seeing the pictures in the image, they have ideas that provoke me, or they take me to somewhere else that I really usually don't know where it's going to go, you know. And so I really like how these artists are bringing a new conversation to the country, you know. Like, I mean, what Antonio Tarsis is doing, especially because he's also not in Brazil, he's in London. There's a more internationalization of the scene, and that changed a lot. I mean, me, myself, I mean, I half of the year in Brazil, but the other half in Europe. And so it's, for a while, Brazilian artists, they were kind of like stuck in the country. And I think that something also happened in these past years, that people traveled, people went to different locations. They understood that they could no longer be only there. You know, there's this, the country, it's quite interesting, but we all know that it can be a bit almost like an island, although it's a huge territory. It might be because of the language. And I think it's important also this movement of coming and going. You go to come back. You go to come back with like more complex visions, and you come back with like different ways to look to that country or to look to that scene. Yeah, and I feel super. I love the possibility of not living in Brazil all the time. Because then I can come back with like different lenses, and because you always need to move somehow to see the room from a different perspective.
I think that internationalization is super important. I've been working on Louisa Strina, who isn't here, but her 50th anniversary publication, and looking at that history, which sort of is the history of, you know, Brazilian art, or at least the market side of the Brazilian art, and seeing how international it was in the 70s. You know, people coming and going, people, you know, going to Europe, Europeans coming into Brazil, and then somehow that got lost, I feel, in the sort of 2000s. But now, in the 2010s, 2020s, that seems to be when that seems really coming back, and Brazilians going abroad coming back, and that sort of, as you're right, that foot in both spaces, and sort of bringing knowledge systems and taking knowledge systems out of the country. And I know Pedro has a lot to say.
Well,
We're going to disagree now?
No. I agree with you. I think your generation is making the change. It's different. You guys are not, you know, you guys decided, I'm going to go and challenge everything. The previous generation, and I blame a lot in the dealers, okay, because we had a boom in the market, so they didn't want to place their artists in foreign galleries. And also because, you know, the market is small, they rarely bring foreigners. For instance, look at group shows in Brazil, okay? You don't have a single foreigner. So how you're gonna create a dialogue? Okay, you want a one-way road. One-way roads, you hit the wall if you go on a one-way road. So the market doesn't help, the dealers, they don't help, okay? But these guys are hungry. Mm-hmm. So they're gonna go for it. Mm-hmm. So you're not gonna stop them. Mm-hmm. Because they know that if they go outside, they make it. Mm-hmm. All right? So this is a different generation. And from these guys, I think that we may go somewhere. But I don't see anything happening from the dealer side. Mm-hmm. Anything. They want to sell Brazilian outside. It's the same mentality of the export country, you know, that you produce sugar and you export sugar, okay? So it's a patrimonialist mentality. And this has proven not to work. Look how we are, okay? And unless we create an exchange, okay, and we are not afraid, okay, we are gonna hit the wall. Mm-hmm. But don't mess with these guys. I hang out with a lot of them, okay? And these guys are really good. They want to go global. They are gonna go global, and they're gonna kick other people's ass to say, listen, if you don't work like I want to work, you're out.
And I think that's coming through in like very slowly into the institutional work, but very slowly because.
But it's way slowly. So you see, you go to Pinacoteca, you have 2 foreign shows in how many years? In Rio, forget it. There is nothing. Okay. In the Northeast, forget it. There will be nothing. Okay, because of lack of funding. Okay. So you don't create this cross fertilization. Mm-hmm. But if you don't create, they're going to create. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you stay isolated. They are never going to stay isolated. They are global. They happen to be born in Brazil, but they are global.
But remember also
Márcio.
that we have that complicated situation of taxes, no?
This is BS.
No, it's something anyway.
No.
It's something.
You can have group shows.
No, you can have group shows, or you can have, like we are going to have now, we are bringing an artist from abroad, from Africa, to do a show with us in the beginning of March. Okay, he's going to be there, he's going to stay for a while with us, he's going to do the show. You can make it, but there is this situation that if we really want to bring, you know, some stuff inside, there is this protective field. But
guys,
for sure you can
I
find
made Leslie
ways
Thornton
to
show. Leslie Thornton. Only video. Regina José Galindo.
No, that's true.
Only video.
That's true.
You know, people don't want to open.
No,
you know,
you can have that.
And this is an egoist thing because you don't make, you know, this part of the culture available for these people, and they are hungry. Yeah. And if you don't do, they're going to find a grant. There's a lot of people giving grants here in the U.S. You know, so you just go, you apply, and you go for the grant, and then you say adios.
I mean, I think
I'm going to leave you behind.
I think that question of the import tax, which is insane, like, you know, to try and bring anything into.
But you can do group
Brazil.
shows.
No,
you don't need to buy. You can do group shows.
Yeah, exactly.
Museums
you
can do group
way,
shows.
Yeah.
You know, so but no, they force. Look at the Octagon.
Museums can also find a way.
Octagon in Pinacoteca is always a Brazilian. Put a Brazilian in dialogue with a foreigner. Expose them. Okay. So I'm not saying that the foreigner will conquer us. You know, so it's the colonization. No, it's a dialogue. Let's debate. Okay. Let's bring friction to the table.
So that question of internationalization and bringing people, I wanted to ask you all a little bit more about sort of, I'm seeing like slight increases of kind of South-to-South dialogue. And obviously you have it in the biennial, and you have it in Video Brazil, but it seems to be slowly coming and much more welcome into other spaces. But I think there could be a lot more. And I know both of you guys have been on recent trips, into research trips to, you went to Nigeria?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you went to
Angola.
Yes. So I wanted to ask about those trips, so not specifically, but just questions of like trying to make that relationship, South-to-South relationship, stronger in Brazil. Because historically, Brazilian artists, you know, if we're going back the generations, we're talking about European immigration into Brazil and that kind of being the fertile ground when we're talking the 1950s or whatever, before. But now, I think there's huge more space for an internationalization that is also decolonial.
Oh, I can tell you from my end, sorry to... we had this event of the Angolan guys in Brazil during the biennial, okay? This was amazing, okay? So I've been in contact with these Angolan guys that are incredible for a while. So Kiluanji, Nastio, Kalafi, you know. So these guys are brilliant. Kalafi was in Princeton for 2 weeks giving talks. We can do, the Brazilians can give talks also, okay? So let's open the doors for these guys to give talks, right? And they're gonna rock the boat. It's a no-brainer. I know that they're good. So let's open these doors. So the other thing I say, you know, so every time we have black artists, okay? So we mention US, Caribbean, Brazil, and Africa. Guys, let's go where the money came from. The true explorers are in Europe. Okay, so let's blame on them. And this was Cameron Rowland's exhibition at MMK in Frankfurt. Yeah. Okay,
Brilliant
so
show.
we can do this. You know, we enslaved more people in this planet than anyone else. All right, so we have in Bahia an epicenter of people there at that university, Recôncavo Baiano. That thing is a volcano, okay, of creativity, of critical thinking, of everything. So we need to put money to work in that goddamn place. And make that thing and empower these people, okay? They're gonna rock and roll. It's a no-brainer. I had no doubt about it. So I learned Tony Cokes from this gentleman here. And I became the biggest collector of Tony Cokes. But I learned with him in the Berlin Biennial, remember? That incredible installation, the Berlin Biennial. So, guys, come on, you know. It's their turn. It's Denilson Baniwa's turn, you know. There we go. They rocked the boat. I was at the Getty. I traveled like crazy. So I went to the Getty in LA, and then there was an amazing exhibition. Denilson stayed there for 6 months in a grant. So he had access to every single book at the Getty. Maybe the Getty is the second largest library in the world, besides, no, the first one is the Congress, the Library of the Congress here. Okay, so he had the Velvum Bible, they have this, they have that. So the show was, he put a timeline of all the books, okay, and then he made interventions in the wall, in here and there. There was no physical work. So you could see that the guy is a brilliant mind, okay? So, and don't try also to label the guy as a native guy. No, he's not a native. He happens to be native, born in Brazil. He's beyond, okay? So how we connect this? Like trying to label, oh, that guy is an Afro guy, so I'm gonna tick the box. Give me a break. Stop this. And this is what I'm trying to fight.
Marcel, South to South.
Oh, yeah, it's much more to do. Was a very nice experience during the pandemic, that we put together galleries from the South, and we did this important project. We invite Pedro and others to be part of it, to be connected. Was important, I think, for that moment, but we need to do more. I think we need to do much more.
I have this long-term collaboration, that also a friendship with curator Gabi Nobo, South African curator. She was one of the co-curators of São Paulo Biennale when Johan Voss was the chief curator. that's when we met, and she invited me to be her co-curator for the 10th Berlin Biennale. That when we presented Tony Cox, and it blew your mind. And so it has been my longer south-to-south conversation, like between artists from Brazil with artists in South Africa. So I've been learning a lot with how people do their things in a context where the resources lack comparing to Brazil. And how artists been trying different possibilities with, basically there's not a established market, it's a smaller market than in Brazil and South Africa, you know, and so what are the possibilities then? What do you do? Like, I mean, how artists work together, you know, that a lot of artists still working together, like collectives that have been ongoing, you know, since the ones who got together to struggle against the apartheid, and now, like during like the democratic times. And so this is my strongest conversation. Like, you know, for me, it's been like, wow, like, I mean, what I've learned in Johannesburg really changed the way that I wanted to work with artists in São Paulo. I mean, I say mostly in São Paulo because that's where I come from. And recently I went to Lagos, in Nigeria, because I mean, it's a huge country, and I think we know very little of what's going on there. Like, I mean, of course, we know some more historical names, but we know very little about contemporary scenes. So I was there to try to figure out what's going on. Yeah, and so I guess, I mean, that's my job. You know,
of course.
Yeah.
So we're going to open it up to some questions in just a minute. So good to prep some questions. And just I've got my last question for you. In terms of the spaces outside Sao Paulo and Rio, we touched on that, and I'm interested in how that expansion. There's been certainly production coming from the north, artists being much more represented, but I'm wondering about how the development of the art scenes beyond the two sort of most powerful axes can happen, or is that happening? And I know, obviously, you're all Sao Paulo or Rio based, but I'm interested in that because certainly I'm seeing more artists from the Northeast coming through, for example. But is there the infrastructure there to support them locally?
I have to say, first, I have to thank the Northeast of Brazil to take us away from Bolsonaro because they voted Bolsonaro out, okay? So I'm very thankful for them. Having said that, I believe that this university in Bahia is a volcano in absolute explosion. Okay, there are other hubs like in Teresina with Marcelo Evelyn, the choreographer. Okay, so Recife has always been, you know, a city of poetry. So you have Manuel Bandeira coming there, you know. Ceará, you have, you know, like the José de Alencar of the world. So, you know, literature has always been, you know, extremely important. So, honestly, I think what is happening in the northeast of Brazil, you know. But it's our job to bring these people to show. No, I don't know how, but we have to gang up together, okay, and make this thing happen. This is where things are. They think differently. They voted this fascist out. So they know better than us. It's a no-brainer.
And I have to say that the second, I was talking about that, the second government of Lula, end of the first and the second was very strong for the exchanging inside Brazil. That the cultural government really, you know, push a lot to go. I remember that I traveled to Belém, to Acre, to different places, and so good artists.
You told me to travel to Belém, and I did.
Remember? That you must go to Belém to see the scene.
And I did.
And you need to go there. you know. For a long, long time, you know, until the end of the 90s, Rio was really the place, you know, of the artists being there. Then all the market to São Paulo. But you need to go to Belém. You need to go to Bahia. You need to go there. Not only to bring everybody to São Paulo or to Rio, because the places are amazing. You need to go there to see the artists and to see the universities there. And then this really happens a lot, you know. They invite you to go to do workshop, to learn, and invite them to come to really this exchange. And then, for sure, with Bolsonaro, stopped everything. Everything collapsed. So now you need to come back again for these years, no? That because I totally agree. I think when we see Brazil is all this together. Brazil is not only São Paulo or Rio. You know that.
Of course, yeah.
So I think now is coming back.
Great.
I'm co-creating a survey on contemporary art scene in Brazil, like that's called Panorama. It's one of the oldest or most traditional exhibitions in the country, and it opens in a year. And so we are traveling all over now because we definitely want to have a show that is not only based only in artists based between Rio and São Paulo. You know, we really want, of course, whenever you try to do any sort of survey like that, it's a mission you're going to fail somehow. But that's part of the fun and part of the job, you know, because and to visit different places and to visit and try to see what are the dialogues. And so I agree when Pedro said that it's super important for us to figure out how can we do these international dialogues between non-Brazilians and Brazilian artists, but it's also quite fundamental for us to do these dialogues between North and South, or, you know, this, because there's still a lack of conversations, or a conversation that we really need to have, deep conversations. Yeah.
Amazing. So, it's your turn. If you've got any questions, you know, relationship advice, anything you want, like ask our panel. The gentleman there.
Thank you. I just have like a follow-up question after the conversation you had on Brazil and international, maybe addressing also Pedro. Pedro, you had an amazing show at your space with conceptual artist Stanley Brown, who's Dutch artist from Suriname. So I was also wondering what's the relationship to the land beyond national boundaries, beyond tax import problem, because a lot of people in this area don't have this, the culture crosses all the national borders. Suriname is a good example, so you're talking of Nordest. So I was just wondering what could be the position of Brazil in this kind of hub of cultures, also working with Salissa Rosa, understanding that there's a different possibility to read cultures, identities beyond the national borders.
I have an idea of this. Sorry, I'm very opinionated. I think that Lula missed in the first government to take over South America in a static way, okay? So this is what Germany did for Europe, okay, was a static takeover. And this is what the Americans did after Second World War, an aesthetic takeover, okay? So it's not just, you know, I believe the aesthetic takeover is way more powerful than the financial takeover or the military takeover, right? So it's about time for us to understand the value of culture, okay? So it's about time for us, you know, to empower our true people, okay, to understand that they have this job to do. And I mean, I don't mean in a nasty way, okay? So, because these guys, they collaborate. So how we spread, you know, this aesthetics around the country, around the Americas, and around the world. And this is his job, okay? So he has a pretty difficult job going forward. And he's the ambassador, and his group and his friends. I insist, there are a number of them, and you know that. It's not 1, 2, 3, 4. There are tens of them, of these guys. So we are ready. So how we make this connection? But we need somehow the market forces to help. Otherwise, we are going to stay in our cubicle there without dialogue. So this is very tricky, but they're going to take care of.
We've probably got, yes, good, a woman. So we don't have to just have men talking. We've got a microphone.
I'm sorry, can you hear me? So I heard Pedro saying that we need to empower through exposure, and I do agree with that. I think exposure brings empowerment, stimulates the dialogue. But Thiago also mentioned something, that your trip to Johannesburg, is that right, has changed the way you relate to local Brazilian artists. And I was wondering what steps need to be taken to stimulate this dialogue, but without compromising the local artist's identity.
Without compromising the local artist's identity? That's a tough question. When I said that my research trips to Johannesburg, they changed the way I want to engage or relate with art, I mean that it was good for me to be exposed to a different environment and to see different perspectives, especially in a city, in a context where the art world is so vibrant. But when I went there, when I returned home because I knew my way home. And so I would say that these dialogues or these conversations or those trips, I'm going back home tomorrow after 3 weeks here in Miami as a place that I never really imagined that I would stay that long. And it's being here, meeting some local artists, understanding that the city is beyond, it's beyond that one that was in my mind when I first started I was gonna travel here and spend so long. So basically, this is just like another example, a silly example, just for us to try to make my point. But what I mean is that when you know your way home, this local identity, as you mentioned, will never be lost. You know, you just go because you know where to come back, and you just come back with more layers. You know, yeah.
I think.
Excellent. Excellent.
I think that we might have to. Oh.
One question is, it's not supposed to be the opposite way, stronger then, because we have been since the military, the dictatorship. We are rich, as everybody's saying here. There's a strong culture in Brazil, but every time what I see is when we try to go out, we bring much more from our country or to think about than we bring to them to see and think about. We can take like books, art story books, or all these stories after post-war, postmodernism, and contemporary art. Why Brazil is still not approaching or bringing much more outside the board than as much as we bring inside? That's the question. And I'm living outside the country for 6 years. It's not much, but what I understand is I have to keep speaking about people or trying to educate a little all about this story since post-war, 40s, 50s, 60s, and all artists we have and the history we have through this Latino American artists. People doesn't know, and in the contemporary way, we have so much influence of the modern and contemporary art, and there is no education in the United States, or I'm talking about North America, about all this rich history and rich artists we have still nowadays that's compressed by the story or who is commanding the market, institutions or private collectors or everything. Of course, we see some big Brazilian artists, but it's not as much as we can show and influence. What I feel is we have much more culture, power, and creativity to export in ideas in these conversations. And then I guess this was part of the question as well, when you bring and don't lose the identity, but when you go, how much of our identity and history we live there, you know, when you go. I would like if you can express or say something about if you have the same experience that I noticed outside the country.
I guess there's still a lot to be done, and so when you say, of course, the way we still, when we think about contemporary art or when we think about artistic practice, even if things changed a lot, we are still most of the time looking to the history of art based on what happened in the West, and so. When I say Johannesburg, for example, and how it was important for me is because it allowed me to remember or to maybe to finally understand that, okay, there's this tradition, this Western tradition that it's amazing, it's super interesting, important, it's still important, but what happens if we just look to another side, to another place? I don't know if I really follow what you said, but I also want, it's important for us to work beyond these national identities, you know, and so I'm the way that I think and the way I organize my practice, it's also because I'm Brazilian and because I was created or raised in that context, but I'm not a Brazilian curator, you know, or I'm not like a black Brazilian curator. Not only that, you know, and so things are just like beyond that and more complex than that. So that's why I leave to come back with more layers and complexities. You know, it's more, it's basically what I was trying to say.
Okay, I think we have to wrap it up there now. But thank you so much. Thank you, Thiago, Pedro, Márcio. That was brilliant, and it was lovely to hang out.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Art Basel.
Thank you.